Today on Locked On Rockies. Well, the finale of the Miami Marlins series wouldn't have been as frustrating. I don't know if frustrating is the right word, if they didn't blow that big lead. So it just still shows how much growth the Rockies still need to go through.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock On Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 30th day of August in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Every time you leave a comment, every time you like the video, every time you subscribe, every time you leave a 5-star review, you are helping the show, and I really do appreciate that. Today, we're going to recap the Miami Marlins series and talk about how the fact that it's a complete switch, flip of the switch, with Baltimore coming into town next. This series, there's stuff to, there are positives, but you can't help but just sit here and feel like this one was another situation in which the Rockies disappointed. This was an opportunity for the team to slam the door shut on a good team, separate yourself from this team that really has kind of been in a tailspin and going in a complete different direction and doesn't, and among multiple things. But there are still things to enjoy and be excited by and be encouraged by. I don't know, I guess maybe excited is a tough word, but there are still no, excited is the right word, because there are things to be excited for, but it just kind of, it just convolutes everything a little bit when you're still feeling the sting of blowing that game. And then even in the finale, missing out on opportunities to jump ahead in that game yourself, avoid another big inning after you just come all the way back. There was so much that happened there that just highlighted the issues still with the Colorado Rockies, but highlighting the issues more as that is a developing team. But when you're playing against that team, you still need to be better. It's kind of weird, I know. I'm a little all over the place with it, but we'll unravel it all together here. Before we dive into everything today, just wanted to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB. That's in all lowercase, by the way, for a first deposit match up to $100. So when you look at this series, right, and when you look at things and when you look at it, most of the time until the finale, the Rockies were in the driver's seat for the vast majority of this series. Of course, you're still upset and completely disappointed by the game 2 meltdown, but the Rockies responded with a dominant performance in game number 3, 8 runs and eliminating damage, taking advantage of the fact that Miami was making mistakes and punishing them for it and getting performances from their guys. Here, it is so incredible to know that the Rockies are as much anger as you can feel about some of the stuff that happened in the series and the way it ended up working out for the Rockies. Man, dude, Ezekiel Tovar, Brendan Rodgers, Brenton Doyle, like, that stuff matters. Brendan Rodgers continues to just be such a fascinating case. It's such a fascinating guy to watch and see. I mean, multi-home run game, still doing that thing. I mean, he is just still on such a tear. It just is so interesting, like, to what the Rockies are going to do, and he's still kind of snapping at. He's cooled off from where he has been, but he's still someone that is can contribute at a very high level. And mixed in with the fact that Ezekiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle have cemented themselves as the future of this team. On top of, I think one of the things that has been really, that's flying under the radar ish. If you watch the broadcasts, they certainly talk about it a lot. Michael Toglia deserves props starting in every game since he's been called back up, and he is now sandwiched between Aaron Judge and Juan Soto when it comes to drawing walks in the month of August. I love seeing we are seeing a lot of growth from Tolia as he gets more and more comfortable at the major league level. We're seeing big plays at first base. We're seeing his defensive impact, and we're kind of, and it's hard to sit there and be like, oh, maybe we'll get a Brenton Doyle effect, because the Brenton Doyle change, Spilly even kind of reflected on this. The broadcast reflected on this in the finale, where it's just, I mean, Doyle's improvements are just so night and day. It's unreal. So to kind of expect some other players to do that is kind of getting ahead of yourself. But when I watch Michael Toglia, I'm kind of watching a player where I'm saying, this is a guy who does have a foundational strength in his defensive abilities at first base. I know it's first base. It's not center field. It's way different. But he's diving, making big diving plays in the infield. He's stopping balls. I mean, he is making plays and having impacts on defense. And I'm just wondering, and we're seeing, he's taking a lot of walks. He hits a lot of home runs. I mean, he hits for power. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, all right, if this is the baseline of Michael Toglia, this is something that can certainly build up, and maybe we can see certain development like Brenton Doyle. I'm not as frustrated by how the final game of the series, because you know what, that it was a Coors Field game that got away for a young pitcher that finally had his had his worst appearance since being with the Rockies there in Blaylock. I'm really not that flustered with how the game went, except with just the fact that multiple times throughout this series, the Rockies had chances to really jump ahead, put things away, and that includes the collapse in game 2. They did it in the wins, but in the losses, you can see how what am I going to say? I'm going to say the classic buzzword. You can see the inconsistencies there. Just look even at the scores of how it went for the Rockies against the Marlins in this series there. In the first game of the series, it's a close one, 3-2, 1-run win for the Rockies. The Marlins do storm all the way back, but the Rockies were sitting comfortably with a 6-0 lead and an 8-2 lead at one point in that game. I think it was 8-2, something like that. 8-4, maybe. I think it was 8-4 at certain points. But it's then in game 2, the Marlins are stifled a bit. So I know the score doesn't reflect it in game 2, but the Marlins until the 9th were pretty much in the back seat. It's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold. I mean, it's just when the offense is on, then the pitching staff melt down. When the pitching staff is on, the offense melts down. It just the Rockies can't seem to be the same team night in and night out, and that includes just when this in the finale, bases loaded opportunities in the second inning. You got to capitalize against these. It's just that's where it shows how far the team still has to go. The Rockies should have swept this series. I mean, in my opinion, I mean, the Rockies should have won this series. They were playing behind and playing a lot of catch up and not playing great baseball. And the pitching wasn't on it in the finale. They gave up a lot of hits and a lot of walks. They didn't deserve to win the finale. Let's not say sweep. But that's what makes that the longevity sting a little bit more of that blown game is now you split this series with Miami instead of a series win. You go through a frustrating finale and you set up a situation in which you really have a bad matchup in not only Baltimore, but how this series is going to start. It is just like what we just saw with the Yankees. Austin Gomber going up against a team that hits a bunch of home runs, and now homer-friendly Coors Field is not a positive matchup for the Rockies. You really don't anticipate winning this series, so now for this homestand, instead of be a series win and a series loss, you're flustered and you're a little disappointed. Not a little disappointed. You're pretty disappointed that you come away splitting that series instead of taking home 3 out of 4 like you should have, like you were in the position to do so. It's just somebody. It's the clutch factor, and it's the consistent clutch factor that's missing for the Rockies. But again, layered in there really solid performances from certain Rockies and stuff to be really encouraged by, especially when you look at the fact that Ezekiel Tovar is great. And I'm just curious how much confidence do those two players give you? Let's talk about that coming up in segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Liquid IV. Listen, folks, it's still hot out there. You're still doing stuff. You're still sweating. You still need to make sure that you're staying hydrated. It's one of the building blocks of taking care of yourself. And when you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone when it comes to Liquid IV. Powered by LIV Hydra Science, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients to turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. You've seen how easy it is. I've shown you on the show. Tear open the thing, pour it in, and enjoy a nice treat. Why is it a treat? Because it's hydrating you and getting you ready to go. Always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you so much for subscribing and tuning in and checking out the show, folks. I mean, been a rough season, been a rough couple of seasons, been a rough go of it there, but you folks have tuned in and supported, and we really do appreciate that. So thank you. I really do want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Like I said, that ain't just nothing, but appreciate it. Hey, for your second listen of the day, Sully's got you covered with all things baseball, locked on at MLB throughout the rest of the regular season and getting ready for the postseason. Pretty crazy that the final month of the regular season, full month of the regular season for the Colorado Rockies starts in just a couple of days. As frustrating as it has been, that's always a bummer to say, because we still do love our Rockies, and especially love the production from two guys in particular. And I want to actually start before diving into just waxing more poetic about Tovar and Doyle. Literally the reason why going through this season and when you're looking for the thing, hopefully in 5 years from now, when the Rockies are a good team, built a core around these guys, and these guys have produced this, seasons, memorable seasons for the Rockies. It's just that's the type of, they play with the style, they have the skills, they do the things that you just love to see. It's not just the elite defense from Brent and Doyle, it's the timely hitting for both of them. It's hitting for power, it's slugging, it's stealing bases, it's flashy defense. There's just so many things to actually enjoy about and watch in their game. That's the type of stuff you latch on to. It's easy to, forget about the state of the pitching staff and other issues with the Rockies when you're seeing that those two guys really can change the trajectory and change the future of the Rockies. If things pan out the way that they continue on this trajectory that they have right now, which it's still early, absolutely, there's still so many factors in XYZ that can certainly happen. But those guys are game-changing guys. Those guys are the reason the Rockies win games. Those guys are the reason that the Rockies will be playing meaningful baseball at certain points. They have the tools and the abilities. And again, it can't be understated and it should be more appreciated throughout the entire game of baseball, just how good Brenton Doyle has been this year and just how big of improvements that we have seen from him. And I also I got a little sidetracked there, but I do want to point out again, I really can't understate this. I think that we are the Tolia, the complete said the commitment to Tolia at first base is one of the best moves the Rockies have made this season. It's just because throw out question marks. And you've had a lot of interest in this guy specifically, and you know that he had an area at the position that he excelled. You know you've been weak at first base ever since your Hall of Famer has retired. Committing to Michael Toglia and letting him go through this and consistently saying, go through it, get out there, go. It's the reason why he's able to get on base through the walk so much is because he's seeing so many pitches. He's been in so many games. When it's up and down, you play this. When you don't play and you don't get the consistency, you can't develop the batter's eye as well. And look at just the game changing. Just look at how important consistent playing time has been for the development of Michael Toglia. This is what we're talking about. This is why when we talk so often about making sure that the young guys are getting opportunities in playing time, Michael Toglia is the perfect example to look at. Again, you're not going to be sitting there blown away by his stats. You're not going to sit there and be blown away by certain things that he does at this stage, but you're going to be impressed when you hear that he's up there with Aaron Judge and Soto when it comes to drawing walks. When you're looking at the fact that he's someone that is up there when it comes to home runs, when you're looking at it when you're looking at him as an actual contributor to this offense, and you're just hoping that the ceiling can go higher. It's again, when I see the Brenton Doyle type the seeds of a Brenton Doyle type storyline in Toglia, it lines up pretty well with what we saw last year with Brenton Doyle. Brenton Doyle still last year showed us it's like, hey, I'll hit a couple of home runs. I got that slugging potential. I'm struggling a lot. I'm not as good of an offensive player. And now look where he's at. Look, and he can relay the process to Toglia. And that's the type of stuff that can start building up encouragement and the type of things you need to look at. And when you're trying to find the silver linings here, even with all this hype and even with all this stuff, though, it still is going to come down to building a pitching staff. It's going to come down to cutting down on strikeouts and taking this hyper aggressive approach that the Rockies have at the dish and making it into better at bats and making it into more productive outs and making it into an offense that generates more runs, even without having to do it via the long ball. But my point is, these three guys are pumping life, and I'm loving the energy that Beck brings to the ballpark. Shunk, he's been getting his opportunities, hits his first career major league home run. He's popping in there and starting to do things. There are things to just sit there and be like, okay. But it doesn't take away and it doesn't negate the frustrating parts. It doesn't take away from the stuff that's been frustrating about this week. Overall, I'm disappointed by the way that this week went. I think that this was an opportunity for the Rockies and these young guys, while they flashed out, while the individual performances of a lot of Rockies players are good. The result being this series split still just leaves the bad taste in your mouth. It still leaves that they didn't separate themselves. They haven't been able to separate themselves. And it just leads to a situation in which the Orioles are coming into town. And instead of feeling like, all right, it's that let's ride a Coors Field hype momentum wave into this series against a good team coming into our ballpark. And let's try to flip the script on them. Let's try to jump ahead. Let's try to keep going out there. Let's use this our aggressive approach and get after it. But to see the Rockies miss in those in so many opportunities in big moments to jump ahead, to put games away, to handle business against a bad team like the Marlins and at home, that's a bummer. Remember, when we were talking before this series, when we were talking about getting ready for this series, we were talking about the fact that the Rockies were putting themselves in a position where they could get back to 500 at home. And while that doesn't mean a lot, that means that you're at least putting yourself in a better position. That means at least you're putting yourself in a spot where that there is a 500 area that you can go for. Instead, the Rockies are 31-35 at home and now face a 3-game series against Baltimore, which a sweep could definitely happen. Or losing 2 out of 3 and you fall to 32 and 37. Yes, it's not really is it a big deal, I guess, in the grand scheme of things? No. But it is a marker that you miss. It's a milestone that you miss. It is something that gets in the way. And for us to have the road or following the road to 61, it's a little more frustration for us as well. But my point is, they have to be ready to handle the better competition, because the Rockies can't afford to take the foot off the gas, because now that they've wrapped that series up with Miami, they're in for a bit of a slog for just about the rest of the season, because you can argue there's not a team on here that isn't at least thinking or considering maybe we're in the playoffs. There's two series maybe where that isn't the case, but for the rest of them, maybe 3 as well. There's still a bunch of teams that are well in the mix, and the Rockies have to be ready for it. They can't drop opportunities, and they can't stumble in key clutch situations like they did in this Miami series if they want to finish this season hitting the over 60 wins and finishing the last month of the season strong. Let's dive more into that, and let's dive into just how much better the Baltimore is and how much this isn't real. If the Rockies pull off a series win, how much of an upset this would be. Let's talk about that coming up here in segment number 3 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, base hits, strikeouts, walks, you name it. You just pick more or less on the stat projections, and you'll watch those winnings roll in. You don't have to worry about someone taking the player that you know is going to have a big game. You can get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. It's just you against the numbers. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, and you can turn $10 into $1,000. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Check out all the action available on PrizePicks on the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. When you download the PrizePicks app and use that code LOCKEDONMLB, you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Hey, we're still on that grind, folks. We're getting closer and closer. Would love to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of the season. So if you haven't yet, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. Really does a huge favor for it does a huge amount of help to the show. So really, really do appreciate that. And folks, like I said, go check out Sully for your second listen of the day. And for your Rockies play-by-play action, SiriusXM's got you covered all season long. On the go, wherever you go, SiriusXM has got you covered. All right, Rockies and Orioles coming up here. And this opens up a set where basically there's mostly playoff time or teams for the rest of the way for the Colorado Rockies. It is not going to be pretty here if the Rockies aren't able to handle business. Baltimore, then a road trip that features Atlanta, Milwaukee, and Detroit. Where's Detroit at? Detroit sitting pretty far outside of the picture, I guess, in terms of the division, but 68 wins, 68 and 67. So teams certainly not trying to count themselves out of the playoff race until it is completely over. Same with the Cubs here. Let's see where they're at. Chicago, second place in the division, a couple of games above 500. So another team that certainly could be in the mix for the wild card. And then after that, Arizona, Los Angeles, St. Louis, and then Los Angeles again. You know, the Dodgers are certainly in the playoff race. St. Louis, another team sitting there at 67 and 67. So both St. Louis and Chicago are going to be licking their lips to get good wins against the Rockies. Might be tough for them as those are the Coors Field series. The remaining games at Coors Field are Baltimore, Chicago, Arizona, St. Louis, and the Dodgers. But The good news is this is the last long road trip of the season for the Rockies after this homestand to Atlanta, Milwaukee, and Detroit. So why not set the tone? Why not pull off an upset and do something crazy here and beat the Orioles? Unfortunately, I just do. Oh boy, I have a lot of doubts, folks. Unfortunately, when you look at this matchup, it is just like the Yankees matchup. It ain't pretty here. Baltimore is leading the Rockies in every statistical category and sitting pretty in some instances here as well. The Orioles as a team are batting .251. They got 201 home runs as a team. They have 315 OBP, a slugging of .443. On the pitching side, their pitchers got a 3.92 ERA, a whip of 1.23, walks under 400 walks. Nearly 1,000, that'd be crazy. 1,135 strikeouts, and opponents are only batting .236 against them. Compared to the Rockies, .244 batting average, 146 home runs, an OBP of 306, slugging of 400, an ERA of 5.50, a whip of 1.52, 459 walks for the Rockies, 913 Ks, and an opponent batting average of 286 against. It's just not an ideal spot here for the Rockies. And then especially you lead the series off with Austin Gomber, who has given up 26 home runs on the year. Albert Suarez, who is pitching for the Orioles in game number 1, he's allowed 8 on the year. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that we know can be an issue here for teams, especially teams that don't go to Coors Field all that often, and how the Rockies can have a chance here to get after it. Walks are an issue here. Albert Suarez here has walked 35 batters this year. That's the same as Austin Gomber. Both of those players have walked 35 batters. Austin Gomber has thrown 36 more innings than Suarez this season. So, if the Rockies can be picky, if the Rockies can get some extra base, some extra traffic, start chasing things, elevate that pitch count a little bit early, that's the type of stuff you're going to have to do. And like we've been talking about, when you have the opportunity to score, when you have the opportunity to capitalize, the Rockies have to do that. If they're going to beat these type of teams, you're going to have to take every opportunity you can. That's what worked in that. And when the Yankees were making mistakes, the Rockies were getting in games and won that one game because they were able to take advantage of it and do some damage there. If Baltimore is putting runners on for you, if they are giving you free passes there, you got to chase them out there. You want to get, work that bullpen a little bit earlier and go after it there. So we'll see. Of course, it's going to be a cool weekend this weekend as well for Jackson Holiday. I would imagine is, and his family as they return to Coors Field is where, Jackson Holiday was raised for a long portion of his time. I'm sure the broadcast will have a ton of stuff. And honestly, this is an opportunity to watch a really exciting Orioles team, a team that I haven't really gotten a chance to sit down and watch a lot. So it is fun. A more examples of why it's better. Baseball is so much better when you get to see the other teams. Matchup wise, however, not great, but both the Rockies and the Orioles have won 3 out of their last 5. Just when you look at the Orioles are coming off of taking down Houston and the Dodgers before they take on the Rockies here, but we'll see how that shakes out there as the Orioles and wanting to make a nice little get some batting practice in, I'm sure, against the Rockies, and the Rockies looking to prevent that, make a little statement of their own and have their young guys go out there and take down another young exciting team. The big way for it to get started, or the big trend, the big momentum setter or trend setter for the Rockies in game 1 is going to be Austin Gomber. Can he avoid giving up the long balls to a team that hits a lot of them? We shall see. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us and making us your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show by firing off your Rockies hot takes. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. But if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Buffs, and Locked On Nuggets all got you covered. It's a lot going on in the world of Colorado sports, and the Locked On Podcast Network has you covered. Folks, have a wonderful holiday weekend, and until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.